I am Rega on behalf of BINARAGA.NET and also Keto Fitness Indonesia. Hey again in this occasion, and at this time we are very glad, we are very happy and very honored to have here one of say like a great trainers from very known establishment organization in the world, mostly respectful for their achievement and research in resistance training. This is on my right is Dr. Slavin. Hi Mark.
Good to see you again.
Hi Mark.
Great to see you again.
It's an honor to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be here, honestly, especially since you just came from class. It was great to have you in class.
Okay. So in this occasion, would you mind to tell us more about what is RTS is and everything like that?
It's one of the toughest questions in the world. It's an organization that started out actually as a different organization in 1989. We originally started as NASM, which, as you know, is one of the world's leading certifications. Well,
so you are before NASM?
We started NASM.
Okay.
We started NASM, myself and a group of other people. I can't claim that I started, but I happened to be there in the very beginning. I happened to attend the first course because I heard about a particular lecturer, the guy that we'll be talking about in a few minutes, Tom Purvis. But as soon as I heard this first lecture, and I was a lifter, a power lifter, I knew all about bodybuilding. I was a doctor, so I went to this first course, and I thought I knew a lot. And I found out when Tom lectured for the first time in 1990, or 89 or 90, I knew this much. But I was drawn into this science that I'd never heard about before, or I should say heard about, but never really understood its implications with exercise. And this is the strange part of the story, within a short amount of time decided I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. Wasn't really thrilled about it, although if I'd stayed with it, I'd probably be retired by now. But I wanted to get involved with this educational process for trainers because NASM was the first organization that actually began to certify trainers, and it was needed. Now today all over the world, as you know, there's thousands. But NASM started it, and it was an honor to be there in the very beginning, and I ended up becoming the first official director of certification for NASM. And we got together as a small group, and we kind of grew in the early 90s. Started traveling. My first international trip was to Hong Kong in, I believe, 1993 or 4. And I love travel. It was my first trip, and I've been able to increase upon that lately, or quite a bit. But Tom Purvis was this gentleman that was brought in to teach, I guess we would call it biomechanics back then. And he was saying things in this lecture that nobody had ever heard of. And nobody was so against, well, I shouldn't say everything. A lot of things were against what we had heard, bodybuilding science, you've heard the term gym science. Yeah. But it went against a lot of things that I had learned as well as everybody else, and rather than dismiss it, I said, all right, I'm not sure I believe it, but I'm going to look into this. So I I became instant friends with him for a lot of reasons. He's an amazing man. And to shorten this, because I could talk for hours, I got involved with NASM and Tom, and was there at the very beginning. And throughout the 90s, early 90s, we grew NASM. We were traveling, but both of us, along with a couple other people, felt that, look, there's a lot to personal training. There's program design and nutrition and business and ethics, and that's all important. But we wanted to do one thing, and that was the biomechanics of exercise, which we now call, as you remember, exercise mechanics, the term that he coined. And it's really referring to the biomechanics, but taking that the meaning of biomechanics and applying it specifically to not Olympic lifting and gymnastics and the stuff that they study in universities, but gym lifts, bench press, deadlifts, pull-downs, rows, all those things, and whatever else you can think of. And so in the late 90s, when we sort of broke away, and this was the early beginnings of RTS, Resistance Training Specialist Program. And it started out as a few days, and it grew and it grew, and today we have 3 levels. The level that you took internationally, level 1. There's a level foundation, that's the next level up, and now the mastery level, which is only taught in Oklahoma and only by Tom, as you know, with the 170 hours of lecture and the 9 full days of practical. So that's kind of where it started. I grew along with it because this information, everything that is RTS, came from this gentleman, Tom Purvis, who is a physical therapist. Was a competitive national bodybuilder at one time. And there's no way for me to describe what he's like, having known him for 30 years and having been very closely associated with him. He has a mind that you just can't begin to understand. He's on a different level. I'm not sure he's human. And I mean that as a compliment. He sees things differently. He's got an engineering mind without having an engineering background. He builds things, he welds, he does all this constructive stuff, which allows him to look at an exercise or a machine and say, what would I do to improve this? And this is really sort of the foundation for RTS and a lot of the information that is put out. And I think it's safe to say, somewhat arrogant, but I will say it because it's not my arrogance, but things that we talk about today in resistance training, the things that are common language today, and there's literally pages and pages, knee over the toe, people that were talking about in the 2000s, he was addressing in 1990. Scapular involvement in all these exercises, no one ever talked about. There's an entire list of things relative to resistance training that is sort of commonplace today that I can easily, and safely, and confidently say originated from him. And what's interesting about the term mechanics is, for the better part of our career, for 25 years, it was ignored. You never saw it in the certifications. You saw biomechanics, and you saw a couple terms. Here's a Roman arm and a force angle, forces, but no one, it was just information put out there. Here's a mitochondria. Okay, that doesn't really help. But these things that we began teaching, or were teaching for 2 decades, 20, 25 years, were ignored and dismissed and ridiculed. Now, with the evolution of the internet, and dare I say the evolution of social media, for better or worse, for the ability to spread the word quickly. Because if you think about this, back in the 1990s, the only way you could learn about what we did would come to the U.S. Or if someone else came to the U.S., they could come back and say, well, here's what I learned. But it gets kind of watered down. Well, today, anything I say goes instant online, and anything that's taught. So what we found in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, with certainly the explosion of Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all the others, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. Now, what we teach is copied very heavily, plagiarized, stolen, imitated. We have a phrase in America, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. We should maybe take it as a compliment that it's all being copied from this one source, but it's just being thrown out there by so many people. So now it's sort of the new thing. And when people hear about the new mechanics and they teach it, they claim it, it's kind of fun to sit back, and you even saw us do it in class. When someone would talk about an exercise and they learned and going, yeah, we were teaching that 30 years ago. we, that new thing you learned last week on YouTube, we did it 30 years ago.
I see.
So that's sort of its history. Now the message really, and this is a weird thing to say, exercise science is part of university teaching. Every major university, including here, has an exercise science department. And I don't want to go too far with this, but the majority of people that take exercise science or learn exercise science or teach exercise science do not teach the science of an exercise.
That's interesting.
They teach the adaptation part. You know, here's if you do it this, here's how you get bigger. Here's the research on muscle tears. Here's all the implications if you do more sets or less sets. And let me make sure you understand that this stuff's important. But no one ever talked about the exercise itself and the mechanics that go into it. So one of the first things I would say is, before we talk about how many, or how often, or how much, or how frequent, or what should be the rest between sets, we probably should talk about how to do it first, and how to understand the forces that you as a trainer are imparting on your clients. Because that's what mechanics is the understanding of forces on the structure, mathematical and physics. And without that understanding, you're really, as a trainer, basically relying on predetermined choreography and maybe science that may not be accurate relative to the exercise. So I know it's a weird statement. There's people that have PhDs in exercise science that don't understand the actual science of an exercise.
Okay, that's interesting. You show us about how, let's say, how Tom Purvis is. It's like dismantling the machines, making tweak here and there to make it improve for the workouts and everything. That's very interesting.
Well, it's a process. I don't want to get too personal into this. It's a process I've seen for 30 years. I was lucky enough in 2000. When I met him, I was living in Chicago. He was in Oklahoma. So it's an hour-and-a-half flight, no big deal. Then I moved to California, again, no big deal. I'd see him 3 or 4 times a year, maybe more. Then I had an opportunity to begin running a personal training program with my education in a city that was only 2 hours away by car. And I said, I have to take this for many reasons. So I moved to a city 2 hours away, Wichita, Kansas. And I was able to go up there regularly and watch this process. And you just reminded me of some of the, there was this period of time I would go up there. He had an obsession with one particular machine. It was a calf machine, for whatever reason. And it was a well-designed calf machine, but he knew he could do better. So over a period of like 4 or 5 years. Now, when I say 4 or 5 years, I don't mean 24 hours a day. But he's one of these minds that when it hits him, he's gone. He's into this world. He's into this calf machine. And
like 100%.
Yeah, it's like going underwater. You won't see him for a couple of days.
Okay.
But he would go through these periods, and so I would come up every couple, 3 weeks or a month, and first thing he'd do, you gotta come and see the gym, see what I've changed about this. And I'd go, okay, 5th change this time, 6th change, and each change was better. Then I actually moved to China, so I'd be flying home every couple of years, and it would still be, here's the latest. But the whole process was to take what existed out there, and I'm not saying that every company is terrible. There's some decent equipment out there, but if you look at the legacy of this industry, and particularly working out and training, we can give a lot of credit to one man, and that man was Arthur Jones. Arthur Jones invented and created a company called Nautilus. And this goes back to the 60s and 70s, 1960s and 70s. He created this company built around equipment, and to the best of my knowledge, it was the first individual body part machines that you would see in commercial gyms. And he had a singular, well, I shouldn't say singular vision. One of his primary passions was to create machines that would, for lack of a better way to explain it, create a fatigue in this movement, whatever the movement is, not at one point. Like when we fail in an exercise where you're doing a curl and you start to get tired, you get really tired up here, but you still have something left in here. Well, his vision was to create machines the way that when you did it, you fatigued everywhere at the same time. And this meant trying to match up with what we talked a little bit about in class, but what we spend dozens and dozens of hours at advanced class talking about, both in lecture and up in the gym, is matching up what we would say is your strength profile, your ability to generate force throughout a movement, single or multi-joint, to match that up. Because humans are relatively the same, and of course yours is a little, probably slightly different than mine. Yeah. But you and I are going to have a pretty good, strong point with the ear, and weaker points at other points in the range. Well, the whole idea would be to build machines that match that up, so that you got the appropriate amount of resistance at every point of rep. And this was Arthur Jones's original legacy, desire, but he never got there. He revolutionized the industry, and he changed it, and Nautilus still, I believe Arthur died 10, 15 years ago, I don't know, but I don't remember, but his legacy was still continued by the engineers of the company. But this was Tom's passion, and he's, one of, I think, his quiet ultimate desires is to continue that quest. But his singular passion, amongst many relative resistance training, but if I had to really say there was one, it would be about the desire to build an exercise machine that could accomplish this. And so I've been part of that. When I say part of that process, as an observer, to watch him do this. And I've had even more fortunate in the last 2 years, because of COVID, I've actually been living in the same town, so I see this every day. I see the same, I get to watch this process on a daily basis. I get to watch that waking up in the middle of the night, running down to the gym, grabbing a piece of equipment, taking it to his father's garage where he builds and welds, taking it back to the gym. But this is a never-ending process that he has and wants to bring to the industry, and you have no idea, I don't know how to express how, because resistance training has been a passion of mine for 30 years, to be there with this person and this eventual organization that was really started, evolved, is really the cornerstone for all what you see today.
Yeah. So, what do you think? I mean, for the RTSS organization, what is your objective?
Well, as we started with NASM, and as I said before, and this is even before I met Tom, but with what I thought I knew, which at the time wasn't much, but my ego thought I did. But I would go into gyms and I would watch I don't even know what they were, instructors or trainers or whatever. It wasn't a profession, but I just felt like they needed some form of education. And it's luck I was in the right place at the right time in Chicago when a gentleman named Dr. Bob Goldman started this thing called NASM. And he brought Tom in because Tom was head counselor at the Weider Muscle Camps, and he was building this reputation as a knowledgeable person. And remember, this is all before social media. Can you imagine if that was today? But I met Tom, and we by chance at this course, I was living in Chicago. I think that was the lucky part. And the objective with NASM and other certifications is to evolve and raise the level of education for trainers. The sad thing around the world, I should throw in here now, as I mentioned in class, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, but it's my experience. I've had the fortune to do this in over 70 countries, including my second home, which is Indonesia. I lived here for several, on and off in the 2010, 11, 12 time. I lived here. So coming back here is really like kind of coming back home. So it's always a little emotional. Glad to see the improvements at the airport.
More than 10 years.
Yeah, the original landings at the original airport was, but no, I mean, it's just the people I've met and the relationships I've made over here. It doesn't matter how many hours you have to fly or how many sleepless things you go through. This is just worth it. And then when I leave, it's always a tough time. But anyway, I'm sorry. So the whole idea was to take this information specific to exercise and begin to spread it to trainers. And I'm going to share something that hit me, and I think it's a very common thing. It was back then, and maybe still is today. In fact, there was a comment in the class, if you remember. But back then, not knowing that this existed, not knowing that an exercise was made up of more than a choreographed movement, there was a science behind it, and a deep science of physics. as I sat through that with what I thought was education, I'm going to use a phrase that I learned from someone else but applies to this. And I've had other people tell me this in feedback, and I think you might agree to some extent, although you have a mechanical engineering background, so it's not as shocking for you. But the phrase that I want to use is, that a lot of people use is, I learned things I didn't even know I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that first time I heard that phrase, I went, that's a strange statement. Then I went, wait a minute. You know, in an exercise, there's a bicep and anatomy, and there's some weight and stuff. And I think trainers say, okay, I know anatomy, but I don't know it really well. But then they get into this other stuff, and they go, wow, I didn't even know I didn't know that stuff. There was a comment in class, which I've heard before, and I'm not trying to fault this trainer, but he says, I was just unaware that this stuff existed.
Yeah.
It's not like you say, well, I know anatomy exists, but I'm weak in it. I was unaware that this existed.
Yeah.
And so, up until the social media phase where other people took it and began to sort of spread it, pretending it was their own, the whole objective was to introduce trainers to this world that there's much more to this profession than just sitting there or standing there or leaning there and showing your client a piece of equipment and then giving them a certain number to do.
Yeah.
And then when they're done, you move them over to another piece of equipment. And I'm not saying that's all trainers. And this is not country specific. This problem exists, has existed and existed in the U.S. as well. But slowly but surely, we're having our impact. Now, the difficult thing is we're not for everybody. I mean, because you know, and people that listen know this, do you need to know this to be a successful trainer? No. You can have a phenomenal personality and a wonderful look and a motivating style, and people will pay you. But that doesn't mean you're good. That means you're popular. It doesn't also mean you're bad. You can also be knowledgeable. But the whole idea was to say, look, this is a profession. And I've traveled around the world, and even in the U.S. many years ago, if you'd said to your parents, I'm going to be a trainer, they'd go, are you serious? No, law school, business school. Become a doctor. But now trainers in the U.S. are respected as a profession, and they're doing quite well. The good ones. When I travel to countries, and this is something that even I had a conversation earlier today about with somebody. When they travel to certain countries, they go, well, X country, I'm not going to name it, Indonesia. They're not going to pay for training here. And my response is no. You haven't shown them the value yet. You haven't shown them what really training is. You've shown them what a tour guide is. Here's a machine. Here's a machine. Sit and do this. When you start to show value, people will pay. When trainers tell me that the reason they don't think they're successful is because people can't afford it, I say, I'm not so sure that's true. I just don't think you're showing them value. You show them real value, and maybe they will continue. So like anywhere else, our goal is to, another term I borrowed from another friend, a good friend, one of the best consultants in the industry, a gentleman named Bob Asquari, who's now getting back into the industry after 20 years. We talked about the professionalization of the profession, making training a professional profession, not just something you do as a part-time job. When a trainer says, I'll be a trainer until I get a real job. I truly hate when people say that. Training is a real job. And I'm slowly watching in my travels the profession slowly changing. So you ask that what we're trying to do, we're trying to be a big part of that, because we feel that it all starts, no matter, if I come to you as a client, as a middle-aged, overweight man, and I want to do something with my body, or I want to feel better, or my knee hurts, or I want to be better at golf, the tool that you're going to use, the tool that we all use throughout this industry, is called exercise. And exercise in our world is about force, and it's about understanding forces. It's about the external force of this resistance, a machine or kettlebell or tubing, and how your internal, the internal response to that force, which comes from your muscles. But what's often left out is, yeah, great, we get that a bench press is for the chest and the shoulders, we forget that there's a shoulder joint in there. So really, if I could go back a little bit and say, probably, there's no question that Tom and RTS really started this profession saying, before we talk about these exercises and muscles and getting bigger, we probably should look at the joints first, because they're the things that are going to wear down. You know, when you're 20 years old, which we're not, no offense, you told me how old you were, you know, our muscles can go on forever. We tear them, they repair. You know, you pull them, they repair. You tear one and they can search it, but joints, they don't repair. And unfortunately today, the only way to repair a badly damaged joint is to major surgery to replace it. Well, our job, I think I said in class, is that we should be looking at our clients who are in their 20s and 30s or 40s and say, look, part of the deal is I'd like you to still be doing this in 20 or 30 years from now. And if we wear your joints down, you're not going to be able to. So you get what I'm saying? So I'm not sure that was a good explanation. Sorry, a little long-winded, but that's the part we're trying to play. But our role is to come in with something that we have started and developed and daily try to improve. And I can say that because I'm part of this daily process now. To just keep trying to improve its information and the way we deliver it, so that we can we can get trainers to understand that this is what it takes to become a professional, and this is what it takes to get your client, not your 20-year-old bodybuilding clients who are indestructible, but the real people, the people that really need it, the people that maybe right now aren't coming to the gym for whatever reason, to deal with those people that have injuries and issues and things. And we're trying to get this level of education to them to turn, I shouldn't say turn it into a profession, that's a little bit negative, but greatly improve the profession.
I got your point. So along the way, you told us that it's been like more than 10 years, your involvement in Indonesia.
So 10 years since what?
Indonesia?
No, I was here, actually I was here, I think 2017, 18 was the last time I was here. But I was living in 2010. I've come back a couple times.
Okay, so let's say, how's RTS in Indonesia?
Well, RTS was doing quite well around the world, but like every other industry or business, COVID sort of put a halt on it. But, man, this sounds terrible, and it was the worst thing that's ever happened in probably our lifetime. But it allowed us to take a couple years off and decide that there might be better delivery systems, which is we put a lot of information online. I've had a one thing I've been blessed about in Indonesia is I met somebody 10 or 12 years ago in class, Elena, who was a good friend in the beginning, but saw the potential for RTS, and she's solely responsible for doing that. Plus my association, I was blessed on one of my first trips here to meet the legendary, I never say the name right, Adi Rai. I met Adi. Yeah, it's like meeting Tom Cruise or something like that. Tom Cruise with muscles. And I got funny stories about that. And his partner, Halim, who is like my brother. In fact, I'm having dinner with him later tonight. But I was fortunate enough to meet these people, and RTS in Indonesia is doing well. We just had a wonderfully full class. Thank you very much to Starfit Gyms. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to say the name of the business, so I'll ask you to say it for me. The people that are actually responsible for right now. Okay. Please say thank you to.
Thank you
to them.
For the BINARAGA.NET.
Yeah, I can't say it. I'm sorry.
And also Keto Fitness Indonesia.
Yeah. I mean, thankful for that, and I'm excited with the response we got this class, which was a lot more than we started out planning. It was just an internal course for a gym, a phenomenal gym, as you know. Yes. And if you've been to the one upstairs, it's better. It's just the awesome gyms. I mean, the first one we were at, where we taught the course, I was like, oh, this is great. And then I came to their other gym today and went, all right, This is better.
This is much better.
It's not much better. It's just
better.
Yeah, better. That's better. You said. But the response from the class, and plus the marketing that they
About common people going to the gym, not really stressing about their body shaping like a bodybuilder, something like that, or having training for a weightlifter.
different goals.
Different goals.
Yeah.
So sometimes the question is quite simple, like why resistance training? Why not cardio?
Well, that's been. You really want the 4-hour lecture on that?
Make it short.
Okay, we'll make it short.
Make it short.
First of all, the majority of people, this is worldwide, the majority of people that go to the gym, we say bodybuilder, and that conjures up an image. It conjures up an image of somebody really getting big and lean and then going up on stage and showing this, which is a wonderful sport. I love watching it. And Olympic lifters and high-level athletes. But the average person, number one reason, overwhelmingly around the world, they do come to do something with their body, to change the way they look. Let's start with that. That's an overwhelming goal. And to me, this is kind of weird to say, I'm sorry, but they are a bodybuilder in a sense. And what I mean by that is, a bodybuilder may go way to the extreme with this, but if your goal is to just look better, for me, lose 10 pounds and try to keep my muscle, maybe to put on a little muscle, I'm sorry, but the body, they're telling you, or their trainer, that I want to be a bodybuilder. I don't want to go up on stage, but I do want to, it's about losing fat and doing something with muscle, and they'll just stop well short before the competitive stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anybody, the word that's seemingly popular in the last 10 years, I don't know how popular it is here, the transformation. This is huge in some countries. Transformation specialist. Transformation specialist is training bodybuilders from everyday people, but they tell the everyday person will tell them, all right, I'm fine, I'm good to go wearing it. So at the heart of anything to do with muscle, and let's also make, I should go back and say one thing. Let's clarify one thing. When you say the word resistance training, again, people are in the gym with barbells, dumbbells, and machines. Every form of exercise, from swimming to yoga to mind-body to powerlifting to functional, is resistance. Unless you're in outer space with gravity, no gravity, you have resistance. And so every form, when you say cardio, let's take cardio for a second. You get on a piece of cardio, you're doing 2,000 repetitions where I might only be doing 8 to 10 with a heavier weight. But people mistake, I'm not diminishing cardio at all, but people maybe don't understand that the function of the heart, well, you're working your heart now, great. You weren't working it on that heavy 10 rep set leg press, tell me your heart rate was a lot stronger, number one. You were doing, interval training, you just didn't know it. Because you do a more intense set than they ever did on the treadmill for 45 minutes, and then you came down. Then you did another set and you came down. But here's what people don't really get. The function of your heart. Your heart has one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to serve skeletal muscle. So whether it's cardio or resistance training, I'm sorry, in our resistance training course, we can talk about the mechanics of an elliptical or a stepper or a bike. It's, whether you're doing this for 30 minutes or you're doing this for a few sets, it's still the same muscles, forces, and joints. So let's put that in perspective. But I know what you're asking, and this is one of my favorite lectures to do, and I'll try to make this short. I hate to use American cultural phrases, but one of my favorite phrases was we've been taught that cardio is the way you lose fat. Yeah. You lose fat by doing cardio. And we used to believe that when you did cardio for a period of 30 or 40 minutes, you burned this many calories, and then for the next 24 hours, you burned double the amount of calories. And we found out that 24-hour period was like 10 minutes. So the afterburn wasn't 24 hours, it was only about 10 minutes. But doing cardio to lose weight, we say, and I hope this will make sense maybe, that in America you have a job and they talk about minimum wage. Minimum wage is like you barely make enough money to live on. Well, doing cardio to lose weight is like working for minimum wage. You're barely struggling. You're going to struggle to stay even, and you'll never get ahead. Now, resistance training, resistance training is, in so many ways, I'm not going to say more important, but I'm going to try to go there carefully in a sense. Resistance training, first of all, puts calorie burning tissue on your body. So if I took you now and I was able to put 10 pounds of muscle on you instantly today, instantly, some magical 23rd century, then your body would begin to burn 300, 400, 500 extra calories a day at rest doing nothing, which is the amount of an intense cardio session. So I used to say to people, look, you can do cardio. What happened when people started doing cardio is they would, well, first of all, when they dieted only, which was traditionally, when they dieted only, they would lose weight, but half of that or more was muscle. So you drop from X, say 90, I don't do kilos, but I'll try 90 kilos to 80 kilos. That's a lot, 90 to 85, 10 kilos, 5 kilos, 10 pounds. And you look at the scale and you're happy, but half of that loss was muscle, which means your metabolism has now gone down. So for you to keep going, you're going to have to diet again and lose more calorie burning tissue. And this process got where, so okay, we'll do cardio. Yeah, that burns a few more calories, but it's not doing much for the muscle. So you're still losing a high percentage of muscle with the dieting and cardio. When you do resistance training, you give your body a reason not to give up muscle. There's a really strange way to put this, but if you're doing just cardio, you've got a little collector guy, the calorie collector guy. He's going around. He needs an energy collector. So you're doing cardio, and he goes around and says, "I need some energy," and he knocks on the fat stores and he takes some fat, but he goes over next door and he takes some muscle. And he keeps taking muscle and fat, muscle and fat, muscle and fat. Now, you start doing resistance training. Moderate intensity. We're not talking about Olympic lifting, bodybuilding. We're talking about moderate resistance training. The muscles are now being used. And when the guy goes to knock on the door to borrow from the fat gives it up. But he goes next door to grab it from the muscle like he's always done. But the guy says this time, "Hey, I'm busy. I'm kind of busy here. I got stuff going on." So he has to get more from fat. Now, I'm not saying it's 100% that way, but resistance training gives the body a reason to hold on to muscle, let alone put on more calorie burning tissue
from fat.
Now burning more fat at rest. And for that reason, it is I'm hesitant to be too bold with this, but infinitely more effective, been proven scientifically to be a vital component in terms of transforming your body. So that's a lengthy explanation for those people. But all right, so you're in shape, you don't want to lose weight. Why should you resistance train? Because in order in this world for you to function, you have to move. And the things that move you are your motors or your muscles. For you to function better, those motors or muscles have to be better at their job. And while resistance training may do a little bit of that, working with these motors in a resistance training atmosphere, forget the transformation, forget the muscle, forget the bodybuilding, turns those motors into better, you move better, you feel better. So for every goal I can think of, resistance training is truly the magical pill. I mean, for weight loss, for performance, for any athlete. I mean, in my day growing up playing sports, we were told with baseball, American sport baseball, not to go into the weight room because it'll make you big and bulky. Well, back in that time, I hesitate to say, 1975, the only knowledge of lifting was bodybuilding type stuff. Well, today every athlete from every sport, golf, Tiger Woods, goes into the weight room and hits the weights, not to be big and bulky, but to be better at their sport. And their sport involves movement, and those movements are controlled by muscles. So you can't think of any reason that resistance training shouldn't be a part of every program. And we want the trainers that are delivering this, prescribing this. You know, if you're a doctor and you're giving a pill for an illness, you'd like to, your doctor understands what's in this pill. And I really believe, and I'm sorry to sound a little bit negative, I really believe that a lot of trainers today are kind of giving out pills, really not sure what's in that pill. Yeah, it looks like a cool pill. It's a creative pill. It's a colorful pill. I saw it on YouTube. I saw some other people taking it on YouTube, so let's give it a shot. They're imitating what they learn, and they're not understanding what they're doing.
Wow, quite thorough. You explained it. Smart.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm glad you try to have that way. So, in relation to that, how can we, let's say, how can we relate that to also ordinary people, but now is 35 or 40 plus in age? Do you recommend them to start having resistance training properly?
I'm going to answer that with there's been studies documented, and I've watched personal cases. Tom started training a man that was in his 90s. And he got stronger.
Yeah.
He was able, when Tom, I don't want to reveal too much, but when Tom, and he's, by the way, he's still training, he's 102.
Yeah, okay.
And COVID kind of messed that up a little bit. But this man in his 90s who was still going to work every day, unfortunately, you may not know this, I'm learning aging sucks. Just, I mean, you don't get...
That will be my next question.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Because I will ask you about the atrophy, the reduce of the muscles.
Well, yeah, I mean, muscles atrophy, but yeah, that's actually a good question. But go back to this, and there's studies that have been documented. People gains into their, even some muscular gains. Not, listen, a 90-year-old is not going to step up on stage with 22-inch arms.
Of course.
But this man and many others have gained benefit. There was a study done that I recall, one of many, of a group of senior citizens, I guess described as 70s, 80s, 90s, who are all in a senior citizen home. I guess some of them with walkers, I mean, all able to walk, some with help. And they started doing just some simple resistance training with bands, and all of them were able to move better. And some of them actually got rid of their walkers. So when you say 40s or 50s, I'm going to say, no, 80s, you can start well into your... Now, obviously, at that age, who you start with and how you progress is a totally different ballgame.
Of course,
but, you know, one of the things we teach, as you remember from classes, the things you need to know, I need to know from you as a client. And we said, what do you have to work with? Your joints and muscles, how much you can control them. But the key here is, what can you tolerate? And you as a 20-year-old can tolerate a lot more as an 80-year-old in terms of, but yes, they can start. So there's, the thing I would impress is, it's start now. I don't care if you're 20 or 70, start now, because you can at some point in time. You will always make improvements. Now, I know what you want to ask about the atrophy. You know, you learn a sad thing, and we've all learned this, that you start out when you're 20 and you're in the gym and you're making gains. You realize at some point in time, those gains stop. And at some point in time, it's a plateau. We all lose muscle. But this is the point I think is misleading. We blame aging on the loss of muscle. Now, certainly with males, there's the loss of testosterone. We can't help that. I wish we could. Well, we can, but that's a different story. I think too much is blamed on aging. I think the problem, in fact, it's not a question of what I think, it's documented. It's not a question of aging so much as we age, we don't move as much. And you know, there's a phrase, you lose what you don't use. So I'm sorry, as you get older, maybe your knee bothers you, and so instead of walking to the corner grocery store, you take a cab, and instead of going upstairs, you go up the elevator, and instead of lifting something overhead, you rely on your children or whatever. You lose what you don't use. So I don't think that atrophy can be blamed on aging as much as it can be blamed on the lack of moving. And so the more you move, listen, right now, you can appreciate this, right now I'm in the gym as often as I was when I was young, and my whole job now is to slow that atrophy and aging process down. I think about my age. Got a birthday coming up.
Oh.
And I think about my age, and I think about my grandparents at this age, and I can see them in my head looking old, hardly moving. And I think about at my age, I'm still wondering, oh, tomorrow I got to hit back. It's back day. And I do this because I want to keep moving. I mean, I realize I'm fighting the struggle to hold on, and I realize there's other issues, but it's not aging. It's lack of activity. And for many people, the gym has become a savior. I've watched in America the largest group in the last 20 years that has started to join health clubs or fitness programs or whatever are senior citizens, baby boomers, which I'm called baby boomers and senior citizens who are joining gyms. You walk into a good American, any American gym right now, not a dungeon bodybuilder gym, but a health club or gym, and you'll probably see more people over 50 than you will under 50.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
So, with what you just said, what I can take is even let's say age is not a matter. You still need to exercise, something like that. But the more senior you are, and with the previous of your age is without, let's say, less training, then you will need somebody to watch your training.
Absolutely. I realize that today there's so much information available online, but I'm sorry, when we use a term, this is kind of a tricky term to use, but if you remember in war, when there was wars, still are, there was a term, land, you know what a landmine is, right?
Yes.
A landmine was something hidden that if you didn't know about and did something wrong, something happened. Well, you have landmines in your body, and the older you get, the more landmines you have.
Okay.
And so if I'm taking on somebody who's deconditioned at whatever age, but the older they get, I've got to be acutely aware of those potential landmines and make sure if we don't come near them or stay away from them or work around them or solve their problem or minimize any detrimental effects, I've got to be aware of that. We have to be more aware of that. I mean, you can take a 20-year-old kid and beat the crap out of them in a gym, and they're happy about it, and they'll recover, and they'll be fine. But that 20-year-old's going to turn into a 30 or 40 or 50-year-old bodybuilder. The old bodybuilders today, a lot of them are not moving so well. It's probably because they beat the crap out of their bodies in a probably ineffective way relative to the joints.
I think if you don't mind to share a bit more, as you mentioned in the class about the joint and muscles, and you mentioned a bit about also the late athletes, famous one that have problems or.
Well, I shouldn't name. I can't name names.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to name names. But if you're a fan of bodybuilding, you're aware of the bodybuilders that were popular in my age. That you look at a lot of them. I mean, some of them are still fine, but a lot of them are quite damaged up. And
the joints, yeah.
The joints. It's not their muscles that are damaged. It's the joints, their spine, their knees, their hips, their shoulders.
No problem with the muscle.
No, their muscles are functioning. Well, their muscles are functioning fine, but the problem is, if you have muscles that are functioning fine, that's great. But if the joint doesn't move, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what this can do. If I move this and this is hurt or restricted, then it's irrelevant. So, as you remember from class, I know it's not sexy. You walk into class and people want to hear bench press, chest, lats. And you say, great, we'll get to those, but how about we talk about the glenohumeral joint, the shoulder first.
Yeah.
And let's determine what we should probably know about it to make this movement as effective as possible, but not only that, more importantly, to preserve this joint longer, because joints don't get better with use unless that use is incredibly properly addressed and progressed.
Wow. Yeah, that's very, very strong.
I mean, you can improve bone density. We know that. You can improve cartilage laid down, but this is done. We use the term micro-progression, really understanding how to take somebody and move them along towards their goal without stepping on these landmines or avoiding them or whatever. And so the joints become the key. You know, it's hard to tell a 20-year-old kid, I'm sorry, but you know, when you're 40, you keep doing that, chances are you're not going to be in the gym.
Yeah.
You know? I think kids today think, you know, it doesn't matter, I'm going to live forever. You know, well, I'm 40-something years into this, and I'm still able to kind of move around pretty good. A little harder these days.
Yeah. Well, this is pretty, how do I say it, tough talk.
Well, there's more to this, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity. I could go on. Every question you ask is a 4-hour lecture, and hopefully we could have a series of these. I mean, that's what Zoom's for and all that stuff. And I have no problem addressing this stuff, and I have no problem. You know, I still, after 40 years in 70 countries and 30 years of all over, I still love seeing that first day of a new class. And I have to say, you know, out of the corner of my eye, you see a bunch of young kids, and no offense, you're not 20, you know that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I wasn't sure, like, okay, a man that's obviously not 20, and you had some great responses to my early questions that very few people ever answered, which is impressive. But then I asked your background, and you kind of had an engineering background, so a lot of this stuff made sense early. But every class, you know, I still get excited about it because what we have to offer, I think, is so vital to the knowledge of a trainer. Mechanics transcends all goals. It explains everything. It is the universal translator. It doesn't matter whether it's Pilates or yoga or bodybuilding or functional. It doesn't matter about the name of the exercise. It matters about the forces that are imparted upon you and how your joints and muscles react. And they all have the common denominator for all of these is mechanics. It starts, and I'll say this one thing real quickly. I just had this conversation not too long ago with a different academy in a different country, and they knew what we did, and they said, yeah, we can see this for our advanced trainers. And I said, no. I said, it's not for advanced trainers. Yes, our advanced class might be for advanced trainers when they really get deep into this stuff. And I'm sorry, mechanics is the foundation for everything. It has to be part of the beginning process. And we're getting there slowly, thanks to your help and others.
Okay. Thank you also for your time.
Good to see you again. I'm really glad and pleasure.
Any plan already for the next event in Indonesia or something?
Well,
we are looking forward to that.
I would move here in a heartbeat. Actually, I like to think there's possibility maybe at the end of the year. And I say that because with COVID restrictions dropping in a couple other countries in Asia, I wasn't planning on coming back to Asia because we're doing a 5-country tour right now: Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and 4 countries, sorry. And so we've got all these classes filled up, and then I'm going to be back home for classes back home. But and then I had some European classes in the middle of November, and I started looking at the end of the year, and then I found out recently that one country that I've been wanting to get back to, I hadn't been in a while, Hong Kong. Special meaning to me, is my first country I ever visited. But wonderful friends there too, but their restrictions, as maybe you may or may not know, have been pretty strict, but they may be lifting them if they lift them. And I thought about Hong Kong in end of November, December, and then talking to the people here, going, look, if we can put something together in December, I'm back home again. I'm back home again.
So you're really looking forward to it.
Well, to come back just to sit and talk with you and these gentlemen here would be my honor. But you know, if we can put something together. I know Elena says you need to be in Indonesia this weekend. I booked my ticket and I'm here. So I just need some people to be willing to sit and listen to me for 4 days, and we're happy to. But we will be back. There's zero question. We will be back soon, and hopefully we can make this December thing happen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark.
Absolutely.
It's my honor.
No, it's my honor. It's my honor.
Thank you, guys. This is on this session we have already discussed tough discussion actually with Dr. Mark Slavin from RTS, Resistance Training Specialist. Thank you, see you again.
Di BINARAGA.NET, kami selalu percaya bahwa setiap orang pasti bisa memiliki tubuh yang ideal dan sehat. Dengan subscribe, like, dan share video ini, Anda turut membantu membangun Indonesia sehat dan kuat. Salam jelas fitness, saya JP.